We begin with the big story and shift our focus to France, where French lawmakers are set to hold a key vote today on a contentious new law which aims to target Islamist extremism. While the French government maintains the law will combat Islamist separatism, critics say that the law is discriminatory and targets France's 5.7 million Muslim community, the largest in Europe. Activists also fear that the law could trample on religious freedoms and turn all Muslims into potential suspects, and therefore there have been widespread protests in France.
Aujourd'hui, c'est ce qu'on est en train de faire. On est en train de faire une loi spécifique aux musulmans. Ils peuvent dire ce qu'ils veulent, hein, que non, c'est une loi de liberté, c'est une loi ceci. Non, c'est pas vrai. D'ailleurs, même la preuve même, c'est cette récente charte des imams, où on demande aux imams de respecter un certain nombre de choses. Je peux comprendre encore les mesures du pouvoir, mais qu'on ne vienne pas nous raconter que c'est pour nous libérer ou que sais-je. Non, c'est pas vrai. C'est une forme. En fait, ils sont tellement dépassés par la question de la radicalisation, par la question musulmane, qu'ils en viennent à faire n'importe quoi. Ils en viennent à faire vraiment n'importe quoi. Et moi, sincèrement, vous voyez ma tête, moi je suis dégoûté. Hein. Je vous le dis, je suis dégoûté, désespéré. Je ne sais pas si ça va s'améliorer.
The legislation aims to curb online hate speech of the kind that led to the killing of teacher Samuel Paty. The school teacher was beheaded by an Islamist radical after showing cartoons of Prophet Muhammad in class. The law will also punish doctors who provide so-called virginity certificates for religious marriages, clamp down on homeschooling for children over the age of 3, and stricter financial controls will be put in place on foreign funding of religious organizations in France. While the words Islamic or Islamist do not appear anywhere in the legislation, activists say that the bill stigmatizes the country's second largest religion, even though the majority of French Muslims do not espouse to extremist views. Now, with debates in the lower house now completed and 303 amendments accepted, the draft bill will be voted on today. The bill is also widely expected to be passed at the Senate, becoming a law within the next few months. Joining us on this broadcast is investigative journalist Mikey Kay, and he's joining us from Wisconsin. Mikey, thank you for joining us on WION. Now, this is a bill and a ruling that the world will have its eyes on, isn't it? Let's talk about Europe. Now, France has been the most hardest hit country as far as Europe is concerned, because it has been hit by a wave of extremism. Since 2015, more than 250 people have been killed in France in jihadist terror attacks. So one can argue that France has a need to crack down on extremism, a wave of extremism that is sweeping across certain sections of French society in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, I think you sort of kind of gone straight to the nub of the issue at large here, which is, you know, there clearly is an issue in France. I've lived in Paris now for 4 years. I'm traveling at the moment, but I've reported on and gone to the scenes of a lot of attacks from religious extremism, from the Charlie Hebdo attacks through to the Bataclan stabbing near Opera a couple of years later. I wasn't in Paris for the beheading, but recently during the trial of the Charlie Hebdo suspects, there was an uptick in extremism once again. And I think the main question that we have to kind of really attack here is what is the source of the extremism, and what are the ways and means that extremism is being able to propagate to the right of arc, which is where murders and assassinations and the kind of beheadings that we've been seeing actually occur, and what actually needs to happen to intercept that radicalization, that execution of someone that's been radicalized who are about to perpetrate an act. What needs to happen in order to ameliorate what we're actually seeing in France? Because, as you rightly pointed out, there is an issue, no doubt about that. So I think I think really, if you study radicalization for a long time, I personally have, you've got to look to social media, you've got to look to the way that the Islamic State have harnessed social media and propaganda in order to achieve their aims. And globalization has done that. Terrorism has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years. Terrorism hasn't. I still think the West is really struggling to cope with the ability of extremists to stay on years.
Absolutely. Right, Mikey, stay with us. I'll just come back to you. For the benefit of our viewers, let me just read it out again, what this new law really proposes. Now, the legislation aims to curb online hate speech of the kind that led to the killing of school teacher Samuel Paty, who was beheaded by an Islamist extremist. The law will also punish doctors who provide the so-called virginity certificates for religious marriages. The law will clamp down on homeschooling for children over the age of 3 now, and it will also impose stricter financial controls for foreign funding on religious organizations in France. Now, nowhere in this entire law does it mention the words Islamist or Islamic, Mikey. And these rules that are being proposed will be across all sections, all religions, right? So any child, whether he's a Muslim or a Christian or a Buddhist, will have to go to a French-run school. It promises to curb online hate speech. Nowhere does it mention will they be targeting any specific religion. So the defense here, or the anger against this law, is that it targets only Muslims. But how is that? Because all rules are focused on a small section of society, small number of people who want to commit a theft or a murder. It's not discriminatory against any particular section of. All laws are targeted against a very small fraction of people who want to commit crimes, isn't it? How is it discriminatory against any one particular religion?
Well, I think basically what it looks to identify are various aspects that are very prevalent inside the more conservative areas of Islam. And so, I think that they're doing a very good PR job here by not attaching that religion to it, but, it's the white elephant in the room. If we take a step back in the 30,000-foot view of all of this, I personally think that France and other countries, to a certain extent, they're really struggling with how to counter this type of radicalization. There is a component of radicalization that is down to the madrasas. It is down to toxic imams who preach radicalization type speech inside the mosques. And one gets the sense that whatever it is that France's government has tried over the past, ever since the Charlie Hebdo attacks and things have escalated quite severely, it's clearly not working. They're clearly struggling in some way. There's definitely a religious component to this. It's well known that elements within Saudi Arabia have provided funding to madrasas all around the world to spread hate speech and conservative Islam. Wahhabism is is what the Islamic State effectively predicated their whole raison d'etre on. So there is that certain element. But I think there are potentially negative consequences and secondary and tertiary consequences to this, which are the fact that is it going to do more harm than good? Is it actually going to be something that radicalizes a greater percentage of the 5.7 million Muslims that are currently living in France or not? That's a serious question that's got to be addressed. And then I think, going beyond that, I think it's obviously a sign that France at the higher level and from the security component they obviously think that what they've implemented so far, and I live in Paris, you've got patrols around Paris all the time now, that's not working.
Right.
So there's a gap here.
Right.
I think that when you look at over the last couple of months, the view that Macron has taken, certainly on freedom of speech when it comes to Charlie Hebdo, he's effectively in essence protected the ability for Charlie Hebdo to put whatever they want on their front cover,
right,
under the guise of satire. He's protected that, and I think what he's doing is he's now taking it to the next level, which is protecting the values, if you like, of what France is established on.
Right. Mikey, one final question. You mentioned that there is fear that certain elements in the Muslim society may feel alienated because of this law, but the Muslim society in France at large, Muslim leaders in France, have come forward and said that they do not subscribe to such extremist views. So I guess a certain responsibility rests with religious leaders across France to hold the society together. One final very important question. There is also, is there a threat that this law could be misused? What is to stop authorities from cracking down on any sort of religious institution?
I mean, there is always that possibility. There is abuse of power at all levels, and I don't think that would be ruled out. But what I would say is that those individuals that may abuse this bill, if it's passed by the Senate, have the potential to radicalize the very threat that they're trying to counter in the first place. Just very, very briefly, France has a long history of occupation in North Africa, and it's also got a major problem of foreign fighters coming back from Syria. So it's got potential for radicalization from the south and from the east. Right. So from that respect, when you've got, the largest Muslim population inside Europe, plus you've got a pretty tarred history the way that France has over the years, there are going to be elements within that are going to be reminded of that, those certain actions that France took historically and potentially radicalized for it. So, multi-complex, multifaceted, highly spoked problem that I'm not sure, this bill that goes through alone will have the consequences that Macron hopes it will have. And if anything, they have to be very, very attentive to the fact that it could possibly radicalize.
Mikey K, thank you so much for joining us. Big story today. French lawmakers are set to hold a key vote on a contentious new law which aims to target extremism in the French society. And according to all reports, this bill is likely to be passed. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.